Handmade Happenings. I'm Marissa. Today I'm going to make a dress for my mom. The pattern I'm using is one that I made specifically for her. It is an A-line style dress with princess seams. So I start by cutting out my pattern pieces from the main fabric. So that's one center front, two side fronts, two side backs, a center back, and two sleeves. And because this is technically a cotton quilting fabric that's not meant for apparel and it's a light color, I decided that it needed to be lined. So I am just cutting out all of the pieces except for the sleeves from my lining fabric, which is just a white cotton poly broadcloth. After cutting it out, I started to pin the center pieces to the side pieces before realizing that I forgot to stay stitch that curve of the center pieces. And this is a habit that I'm trying to get better at actually doing, so I pulled out all of the pins and stay stitched both curved edges of both center pieces. Now I didn't go all the way down either of the seams because it really didn't need that. It just needed it kind of from the top down past the waist. Then I went back to pinning the center piece to one of the corresponding side pieces with the right sides together. So that's the center front to the side front and center back to the side back. As I do this, I clip the curves of the center piece so that it lays properly along the curve of the side piece. And I do this for both the main and lining pieces. I sewed these together and then repeated to attach the remaining side pieces to the other side of the center pieces. Now I'm pressing the seams out toward the side. Normally I'd serge the seams at this point, but since I'm lining it, I actually don't need to. Next, I place the front and back dress pieces right sides together and sew the entire right seam across both shoulder seams and the top 2 inches of the left side seam. And that seam is left open because that's where the zipper will go. I do the same for the lining, except that I sew all of the left side and only 2 inches of the right side because of how the lining is going to lay with the main fabric. It has to be the opposite in order for this to work right. I pressed the shoulder and side seams of both pieces open, and then I went ahead and serged the hem of the lining. I pinned the lining and the main dress together at the neckline. I need the right sides together, and I did this by flipping the lining right side out and then put it inside of the main dress, which was still inside out. Then I sewed around the neckline, clipped the curves, and flipped the dress so that it was right sides out again, and pressed it. I basted the lining and main armholes together so that they were ready to add the sleeves. For those, I started by serging the hems, then folded the sleeves in half with the right sides together and sewed that underarm seam. Then I turned up and sewed the serged edge and sewed a running stitch around the top of the sleeve. I used the running stitch to ease the sleeve into the armhole, pinned that sleeve into place, and sewed and serged them together. I measured down the open side seam to determine where I wanted the zipper to end and clipped a notch there through all 4 layers. I serged both side seams starting at the top and ending at those notches. Then I sewed in this ridiculously long zipper using an invisible zipper foot. And since the zipper is so long, I stitched over the tail using a zigzag stitch and then cut the excess off below that stitching line. Now I'm sewing the remainder of the side seams of both the lining and the main dress, making sure to sew them each separately. To finish off the hem, I am pulling the main and lining hems up and wrapping them around the top of the dress so that I can pin them right sides together. As I do this, I'm lining up all of the vertical seams. I'm also lining up the raw edge of the main fabric with the edge of the serging on the lining. This makes the lining slightly shorter than the outer dress so that the hem kind of rolls under and doesn't show from the outside. This also makes the hem of the main dress marginally larger than the lining, but a small pucker as I pin it together fixes that. I sew around the edge, leaving an opening that I use to carefully flip it right side out. After forcing all of that fabric through a hole that I probably should have made a bit larger, I press it all again. And now you can see the hem and how the printed fabric turns under, and I just use a whip stitch to close that opening. And it's done. I was a little worried because I've never done this style of dress and had it lined. I was worried that the extra fabric would cause it to hang different, but it doesn't seem to have affected it too much. Thank you for watching, and I hope you'll join me next time for another handmade happening.